Welcome to the MindShift Show. I am your host, Pamela E. Bloomfield. The MindShift Show is turning mindsets into ICAN, where we transform chaos into clarity and empower professional women over 40 to reclaim their purpose and thrive. Today, I am so thrilled to have a truly inspiring guest, Michele A. Wilson, a multi-passionate mompreneur, author, speaker, and founder of Mompreneur Conversations, where she supports moms, especially those raising children with special needs, as they redefine balance, reclaim their identity, and build purpose-driven lives and businesses. From building her business in hospital rooms, yes, as a single mom and caregiver. And she will share her journey of resilience, faith, and breakthroughs. Michele, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the Mindshift Show today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Pamela. And it's truly an honor and it's a blessing. And I'm just so grateful that you're having me today and be able to share my short story with you and just have a conversation. I really love what you're doing with the Mind Shift show. I really believe the mind is a powerful tool when we're able to, just claim it. And so thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, it's a pleasure. So, Michele, before we dive into our conversation, which today is chaos to clarity,
Mm, I
what's
love
your
that.
favorite thing to do that brings you peace?
My favorite thing to do that brings me peace is listening to worship music. I have playlist after playlist, and when it's those times, I love to pray, but sometimes when, like you were saying, in the chaos, to soothe my mind, I love listening to praise music. And I have different playlists for different parts of my life through my journey that's helped me, through some difficult and challenges times, but it soothes me. I have, like three that are my top favorite that I actually start with every morning so that I
Wow.
can actually start with peace and instead of having chaos and then go to peace. So I love my praise music.
Yes, and we resonate with that. We share that together because I start every morning with prayer. We have family prayers that we
Yeah.
have every morning throughout our faith. Yes, and that brings so much peace. That's beautiful. I love how you found that peace amidst everything. And in our previous conversation, you shared with me that your son was hospitalized, and that was the beginning of your journey. So, can you take us back to that hospital room with your son and tell us what shifted inside you that made you decide to start your growth journey right there in that place?
Thank you so much. I actually grew up in the church. My dad was a deacon, my mom was a deacon wife. So I was, really raised with God in my life. However, at that point when my son he was 6 years old, and I really didn't have a relationship with God at the time. And the doctors had said we were in the hospital pretty much like 5 months. They were diagnosing him because he has a really rare medical condition. And I remember the doctor coming up to me and saying, in order for your son to thrive and continue, we need to remove his colon. And I
Mm,
was like, 6 years old, what? Remove his colon? And I first picked up the phone, tried calling my mom, my dad, those around me to get some advice.
mm,
And, I was really inside because as a mom, that's a really difficult decision. Your child's life is going to be impacted for the rest of your life. But in that moment, no one was picking up the phone. So I turned to God and I prayed.
yes.
And, God just said, I really had to surrender. It wasn't in my hands. I felt like I didn't have the power anymore. And so I really, at that point, surrendered and really trust God that He was going to take care of him and that, I was making the right decision. And so that's where my journey of my faith growth really built, where I was building a relationship. I knew God all my life, but I didn't have
Mm,
a relationship with Him.
mm. Wow, that's That's what I call a turning point.
Yes, it was.
Yes. Thank you for taking us there. I could just listening to, and you've shared this before, but listening to it again, I can really feel the emotion that overwhelmed you.
Yeah. It was very emotional. And as I said, we were in the hospital before that decision. I literally moved in the hospital with my son. I didn't want to leave him. So those months of just the doctors coming in, and my son was in a lot of pain. He was in a lot of suffering. So at that point in time too, I didn't want him to continue to have that pain and suffering because it was so rare. They were just taking tests. They really didn't know what was wrong with him. And so, like I said, it was just God. I had to turn to God, to
Mhm.
surrender, to get peace. And that's where, oh my gosh, things changed. And I became more thankful and grateful
Yeah.
in my journey walk because I saw, you don't really realize how life is precious when you see a child who's suffering,
Mm.
and I know that now I know God gave my son to me. He trusted me to take care of him in the beginning. I never asked why. Well, like maybe once or twice, but in that journey, it finally became, God trusted me enough that I was going to take care of him. And so,
Mhm.
I started a business out of my son's room because I wanted to be there for him. As a single mom, I still had bills to pay, and I had two other children too. They were a little bit grown. My oldest,
Mhm.
they're 22 years apart. However, I still had responsibilities. I still needed to bring an income in to pay for my bills, but at the same time, I wanted to be there for my son. So I really needed to trust God that He was going to provide for us during that period
Yes.
of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did clarifying your true identity shift you out of caregiver burnout? How did that happen?
That was a process, let me tell you. When I shared with you, when I did hit burnout, at the time, I was I was so focused on my son. Being a caregiver is already a full-time job.
Mhm.
So, taking care of him 8, 9 hours a day and then building a business. And I was building a business on other people's turn. I was looking at success, how it was defined, by
Yes.
money, having, hundreds, millions of dollars in the bank account.
Mhm.
And I didn't see that in my bank account, right? And
Mhm.
so I always felt like I was a failure because
Mhm.
even though I was working really hard, taking care of my son, building a business, it was successful, but still the money wasn't in there. And
Yeah.
when I realized the reason why I was building the business, the type of business that I had, is because I wanted the freedom to be able to be with my son. So the shift happened when I realized I needed to reclaim my identity because I was so focused in my business, you know, trying to achieve success the way, society wanted success, and then
Mhm.
also being there for my son. And then there was a period of time where actually my son was sick, my mom was sick, and my sister was sick. So I was caregiving for three people. And when I hit burned out, I realized I needed to do something different because if I wasn't taking care of myself, there's no way I can take care of other people. So I really needed to learn how not only to put faith, but it's myself and then other people because it's like that
Yes.
oxygen mask. If you don't put on your oxygen mask, you
Mhm.
cannot help other people. So that's really where it started when I couldn't even move and I was scared because I was like, how am I going to? My son was at, they call it turtle camp, a special camp for kids, and they have doctors. And I was like, I couldn't even get out of bed
Mm.
because my body had shut down. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get to my son? And so just that scare alone, I think God was, whispering to me at that point in time is, girl, you need to take care of yourself because you can't take care of anybody else. And so
Yes.
that's
Yes.
when I had to learn how to reclaim my identity. And it's not just in the self-giving, but it's also what was fulfilling for what was fulfilling what I was doing. I know I loved my business, but it wasn't really fulfilling at that time
Mhm.
because, like I said, I was so focused on the money and
Yes.
not about, it's about impact and helping other people. But I
Mhm.
really had to see, like, what does Michelle love and enjoy? And make sure she's doing those things while I'm still building a business and taking care of my son.
I love that. Yes. That word clarity. Clarity is what I always say, it cuts through the fog every time. I hope our listeners are feeling the power that's coming from this podcast today. This is why I included that word clarity in my ICAN framework. And you and I talked about that. The power of being able to name clarity, giving it a specific place so you can move forward, right?
I agree. I mean, one time when I learned about clarity, one of the things I always say, especially when you're learning something new, and as you said, it's like reclaiming your identity, there's going to be confusion. And I always say out of confusion comes clarity because there is this messiness in between. But starting off, I know we talked about, creating our personal vision statement. That's where I started when it came to clarity. I needed to know who I wanted to become and who I wanted to be before I could even step into that role of becoming.
Yes.
So clarity, I always say sometimes it's out of confusion, then you'll get clarity, but you do need
Yes.
to write it down, make a plan, and have it happen. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and you just segued right into the next question I have for you. Can you share with us a small activation? You talked about the vision statement, the vision board. Can you share a small activation step? And you can talk more about the vision board that turned your daily chaos into forward momentum.
That activation was writing it down and actually taking time to like who I wanted to become, be, and have. And in the beginning, when I wrote my vision statement, it was a lot of having. I wanted the big
Mhm.
house and, I wanted the cars. But as I grew, not only in my faith and my spiritual development, my personal development, I realized it was more than just the things that I wanted. It was the big person I wanted to become. So that
Mhm.
activation of actually wanting to, understanding who I wanted to be and what I wanted to have and how I wanted my lifestyle. I looked at my values, I looked at my core values in my personal core values, my family core values, and my business core values. So those,
Mhm.
few things is what for me activated that step. And when I wrote it down and I put it away, that was, gosh, over 15 years ago. I look back and I'm like, wow, I really accomplished those things, but I really needed,
Yeah.
as you said, took time and get that clarity of who I
Yes.
wanted to become. That was what was the key aspect for me.
Yeah. That's pure gold. That's pure gold. Those tiny little sparks that change everything, that's gold. That's gold. So in what way, Michelle, did you rewrite the narrative around balance that changed everything for you? Balance. How did you rewrite that?
Well, I rewrote it at it's not really such thing as balance because you're always teeter-tottering. So I look at harmony. I say, the world is, balanced and, that you want to be balanced. But now I know I have what is called it dynamic adaptability, what I in my coaching program. It says you got to be adaptable and you're always doing this, but you wanted to make sure it's in harmony. So, I'm a mom, I'm a special needs mom, I'm a business owner, I'm also a daughter, So all those things, and it goes to, as I said, my core values. When I realize if I am off, if I'm way off, I look at my value system, and if
Yes.
it's not in alignment, I let it go. You know,
Yeah.
I just let it go. Sometimes I get into, business collaborations, and I just really, it's like this, and then I'm like, you know what, I reevaluate. Is this in alignment with my values? And if it's not in
Mhm.
alignment, then I let it go.
Yeah. It's like reframing what you do.
Exactly,
you know.
reframing,
And
as
you
you
talked about harmony. And that's a word that I love too, because we always try to find workplace balance or balance between your personal and professional lives. And you were right. There's really no balance. You can't really balance it. You have to make sure that everything is harmonized. It has to be in sync,
Yes.
right? So I love that. What role did inner clarity play in seeing faith as a fuel, and we've talked about that, for your purpose-driven path?
For my purpose and path, going back to when we were talking about the balance, I felt like we're talking about chaos. And there was a time when
Mhm.
my life was really chaos. I felt like I was in the spin cycle, couldn't get out. And, it was like I said, in those moments, especially in darkness, because there was times I really did, I had family that loved me. I had friends and colleagues that really loved me, but didn't quite understand what I was going through because I didn't really share a whole lot of what I was going through with my son.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had in those dark and lonely times, I would just open up my Bible and just start reading, and God gave me the strength and the inner faith because I remember there was a couple of phrases or quotes like Jesus, wow, I can't remember now, but I had those anthems, these scriptures that would help me get me through. All my strength comes from Christ alone. When I didn't feel like I had any more strength anymore, um, I would give it to Christ. And so he gave me, that's where, my identity comes from, is actually from I am a child of God. And so when I
Yes.
have that identity coming from that place, I just want to love people and support people and just it's a being. It's not, I always thought it was a doing because I am a person of a high achiever and always out there helping others. I'm a recovering people pleaser. But I realized when I put my identity in God and in Christ that, I know I'm perfectly imperfect because that was another thing, as a mom. We're trying to do it all and things happen, right? And there were times where I would just feel so, so bad and guilty, but I realized, I'm perfectly imperfect. I just want to be, get better 1% every day.
Yeah.
And if I have that as a aspiration of just becoming better each day, then that harmony will actually is in my life because I do know that I am committed to growing every single day and transforming every single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Faith lighting the way.
Yes.
That's how I want to put that. Faith lighting the way. That was beautifully said. Talking about faith, and I share this with you that when I created my framework, which is ICAN, ICAN, it came from, excuse me, came from the scripture. I think that's the scripture you were trying to remember because we
Yes,
shared
that's it.
that.
I can do
I
all
can do
things
all
through.
things.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it. That's my I can. Oh my God, that scripture during those times in the hospital room, during those times that was I can. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
I can do all things through Christ, which
It's-
strengthens me.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, Michelle, you work with moms, mompreneurs. I love that. How do you spot the patterns that keep high achieving women stuck in the chaos or in the overwhelm? How do you do that? How do you spot that?
Well, you were talking about the stories we tell ourselves. That's one, right? The stories that repeated, yeah, we tell ourselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it comes from a sense of unworthiness, I see that as a pattern in moms.
Mm-hmm.
Because as caregivers, we want to help others so, so much. But then we let ourselves go. We don't take care of ourselves. We let ourselves go, right? And it's not being selfish. And I don't know if it's a society thing or what, but it's not out of selfishness to take care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
really out of selflessness, right? As I said earlier, you cannot really help others unless you help yourself first. So the pattern, that I see is, just especially caregivers just giving so much of themselves and not replenishing themselves, and so I think it's really, really key. And as I said before, you do matter. And, I call it from self-compassion to self-love is really loving
Mm-hmm.
myself. You need to love yourself. And through loving yourself, you are a representative of God because he loves us so much.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
he does. Those patterns, they are sneaky.
Yes, they are. And you think you've, I won't say eliminated them, that you've overcome them, and then they
Uh-huh.
sneak back up because every time it's like every challenge. And I look back sometimes, I'm like, God, you brought me through that time. Why aren't you going to bring me through this time?
Mm-hmm.
However, like you said, it just sneaks up. I
Yeah.
work on that. I mean, it's a pattern that I personally worked on. So that's why I believe I can identify it in other people because it's something that I've been working on, and I know I continue to work on it. And like you said, it's just the pat it's in our sometimes it's in our DNA, and it's just
Yeah.
need to practice it. Life is a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just practicing over and over again, and don't know if I'll arrive, at that moment, but I just have new experiences. So I just really at the point just love life and want to be in joy and
Yes.
happy.
Yes. I hope our listeners are taking notes because
Mhm.
those sneaky patterns, they will creep inside you unknowingly,
Right.
unknowingly. So pay attention to them. Our professional women over 40 also include caregivers. And I want to honor every one of you today. I know this because I remember caring for my own dad. So,
Mhm.
Michelle, what's one simple activation practice for reclaiming energy amidst the endless caregiving tasks?
Wow. 1 minute. I mean, just actually going outside
Mm.
and looking at the flowers, looking at the sky, because I know as caregivers, we're on the go all the time. So just
Yes.
that simple, taking a simple, getting that breath, really breath is really important and quieting the mind, even if it's for 5 minutes. And it's a practice. It sounds simple, but it is kind of difficult. If you just sat in a chair for 5 minutes and try not to think about anything, it's difficult. But, just putting on some music. I mean, there's so many things that like, I know you said one thing, but for me,
That's
it's
right.
just taking a pause, especially when things are just out of control. And I actually really the one thing that really has helped me is I'm always thankful and grateful. So I run that. Like when something is happening, I just immediately I just say I'm thankful and grateful. And that pattern actually it releases that tension because in everything that I do, I can find something, a learning lesson, right? Something
Mhm.
that's it's not happening to me, it's
Right.
happening for me. So it's
Yes.
always in that reframing. But just even saying I'm thankful and grateful, that
Yeah.
activates you to a whole level of vibration, no matter what you're going through.
Yes.
And so sometimes I'm just like, I'm thankful and grateful. The sky is falling, but I'm thankful and grateful.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is real. I think that's my number one thing. I'm always thankful and grateful.
Yeah. Gratitude. Gratitude. My dad usually says that gratitude goes higher than we do.
Yeah. Oh, I
It goes
love
much
that.
higher. Yes, it goes higher.
Mhm.
And what you shared is really practical gold. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Really
Yeah.
appreciate
I
that.
love about practicality because
Yes.
I said as moms and special needs moms, and you mentioned as just caregivers, women over 40, we are caregiving for our parents, our elderly parents, and then if we have children, I learned several years ago, it's called the sandwich generation. We are sandwiched in, we are doing
Mm,
our best to live our best lives, yet we're taking care of
mhm.
our parents and to still taking care of our children. And even now, I have adult children, and a couple of times, they were going through crisis. So
Yeah.
I had to take a pause and, help them in their life journey. So,
Yeah.
as moms, I really believe moms and as women, we're always giving to other people. So that's why I think it's so important for you to give to yourself first.
Yes. Take care of you first and
Yeah.
we can't give from an empty place.
Yeah,
We have to make
exactly.
sure that we are fulfilled so that the person on the receiving end will
Hmm.
also get that fulfillment. I love that.
Yeah.
How has um how has narrating your story empowered this new story that you have now? How has it empowered the breakthroughs in the messy part of life?
Oh my gosh, in
As
writing
I
my
call
book,
it, from the messy part to the masterpiece.
yeah, the messy part to the masterpiece. And the name of my book is actually If Your Laundry Could Talk. And I am going back and looking at all the messiness, that piled up. And actually, I forgot myself because I was at the bottom of the pile of all the laundry that was going on. And so it's allowing me to really see how I move through. Because I was going through survival mode for several years, and now I believe I'm finally at a point where I'm thriving, and it was started with my mind, that shift in my mind, and so going back and rewriting, writing my story, now I get to see, like you were talking about, what are the nuggets? I don't even remember the nuggets. I was just going through it, but now that I'm
Mhm.
writing my book, and it was funny at the time when I started writing my book, I thought it was going to be this one book. It was going to be about business and marketing, and I'm like, God was like, no, 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 no. It's not about that. It's about your story and how, you through this process, transformation didn't happen to me. I didn't have the big breakthrough overnight. It took several years for me to
Mm-hmm.
grow into that breakthrough where I was really at a place now that I'm more at peace
Mm-hmm.
with life. And no, things happen, the like I said, the laundry is overflowing, yet I still have this inner peace.
Right.
And that is so beautiful when you're able to reach that place of inner peace, no matter what is going on in your life. And I'm not sure if I answered your question. I just kind of,
Yes, you did. Yes,
yeah,
you did.
okay.
Yes, you
I
did.
was like, oh God. But yeah, it's that inner peace. It's
Yeah.
reclaiming. You talked about identity is
Mm-hmm.
through being a child, but it's reclaiming that inner peace. No matter what is going on, I
Mm-hmm.
know God is there for me and He's going to
Yeah.
take care of me
Yes.
and my family and the people around me.
Yes. And he
So
promised never to leave you and
never,
never to
ever.
forsake you. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm so inspired just hearing this. So inspired. When did clarifying the gap between surviving and thriving become your
Yeah.
turning point?
It really happened. I know when I hit burnout, I shared with you there was a point when I hit burnout and I knew I needed to do something differently. And at the time I was driving like 30,000 miles a year and taking care of my son. So I was just always, and I knew I just needed to do,
Mhm.
I wanted to do business differently. And so I had a business in the hospital room that I started and I still have that business, but I realized at that point in time that I didn't want life to happen to me. I really wanted life I wanted to take more control of my life, even though I knew all the principles
Mhm.
and everything. But I just always just felt drained and tired and exhausted, and I wanted to feel that vibrant. As I was saying, as I matured and got older, I realized, that I could go without sleep with my son. There was times I would be 24 hours, 30 hours without sleep in the hospital. But actually, in January there was an incident. I'm like, my body just couldn't do it anymore. So
Mhm.
it was at that point, it was really more of a physical, when I realized that I needed to take care of my temple for me
Mhm.
to move on. And like I said, it wasn't really one point, but it was a combination of points. But I would say in the last 5 years is when I really was more intentional with my care for myself while caring for others. That's when, and my mother, and I saw my mother, that was actually another I think that was really a pivotal point because my mom was this caregiver too. My sister had Down syndrome, and my mother, she didn't take care of herself, and so I saw her health decline. So that was probably a waking moment for me when I
Mhm.
saw my mother, because she had wanted to have control over everything, over how the care of my sister was, and she
Mhm.
didn't really take care of herself. And she loved God, she loved Jesus, but I saw her body just literally, it just gave out on her, and so. My sister's still living, but my mom's not here anymore. So that was really the wake up call when it came to I really need to pay attention to what's going on with my body.
Mhm. That gap, the gap that you
Mm.
talked about, it holds a lot of magic.
Yeah,
The
that gap.
gap holds such magic. Listeners, I hope you're realizing this is where transformation lives, within
Yes,
that gap. And it's
exactly.
to figure it out.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about the gap because I used to have a friend when I was in the hospital. There were times that I couldn't, I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't even pray. So you need to have support and people around you to help stand in the gap for you. And when I
Yes.
was building my business, I had coaches, I invested a lot in myself in that period of time with
Mhm.
coaches, mentors, and then I had, prayer groups. But, when you're in that moment where it is chaotic in your life and
Mhm.
it's difficult for you to pray, just surround yourself with people who love you, who can
Yeah.
stand in the gap for you.
Yes.
You're looking to get, over to the other side or getting through what you're going through. So
Mhm.
that gap was so real for me because there's so many people I'm so thankful and blessed that have been able to stand in the gap during those times. When I'm in the hospital, I'll, call my daughter and the prayer group, please pray for us, you know? So
Yes.
you got to have someone in the gap with you.
You have to, yes.
Yeah.
You need the support. We all need that support. So that's so
Yeah.
important. Now tell me, what happens for professional women over 40 when they begin to activate their purpose, no matter what the circumstances are? What
Wow.
happens for them? Tell them.
It is a feeling of just, as I was talking about, peace and just being kind of, I know I feel like I'm unstoppable, you know, no matter what comes my, and we've been unstoppable all those years, but when you're able to actually reclaim it, and, you know, it's just how you show up in rooms. I mean, people will say, you know, you're looking younger. Why? You know? You know, because you just have this glow about yourself because you're just taking care of yourself. And it starts from the inner peace, right? That inner self, and
Mhm.
it's transformed. And when you go out and you do things that you love, not the have tos, I mean, it's just a feeling of just I'm in my best life. You know, I
Mhm.
really feel like I am in my best life when you are able to activate that and your confidence level, you know, rises. And you know what? You get into that point where I don't care what you think, you know, and it's okay. You know, I have my own path, you know, and that's why I started Mompreneur Conversations, the platform, because I wanted to have some place where it was safe that you could talk about difficult things, but at the same time, you can create your own path. Everyone
Yes.
has their own path. And, you know, when you're able to activate it, your path, your purpose, oh my gosh, it's just amazing. It's that fulfillment. You know, I'm really
Yes.
feeling more fulfilled in my life now.
Your path, your purpose,
Yes.
with God in the lead.
Exactly. I say,
Yes.
you know, we
Yes.
talk about leadership all the time, and I'm like, God is my leader first. You know, my
Hmm.
leadership comes from Him. And I'm
Hmm.
going to say, like I said, I ain't perfect because there are times I take it over. You know, I'll take over and try to do it in my own strength.
Yeah,
And that's
human,
when I'm
human.
human, right? And then I'm like, okay, I give it back to Him and I take it back and I get, so it's still, like I said, it's a practice. I'm learning, but every day I give back to Him. Oh my gosh, He shows up in so
Yeah,
many amazing
so
ways.
many ways. Yeah. Michelle, you have a book, and you know this is the part I love. You have a book called If Your Laundry Could Talk.
Yes. Oh my
Where
gosh.
can our audience get a copy?
Well, they can go ifyourlaundrycould talk.com. And I just want to share, you know, when we think about laundry, that is that thing, you know, that dirty laundry, you don't want to talk about it. And this book is not about those secrets and dark moments. It's just allowing us to have space to just talk about things that have get us stuck, right? And we want to
Mhm.
get unstuck and
Mhm.
just, you know, it's just about being loved and being able to share. Like you said, I thank you for allowing me to come on and talk about my story, but really that's all it is about. If your laundry could talk, what would your story say? Because we all
Mhm.
have a purpose here, you know, and that's why I'm just thankful and grateful that you had me on your show today.
Now, if clarity, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Think about this.
Yes.
If clarity could send chaos, let's get it right. If clarity could send chaos a postcard from the future, what would it say?
Wow. What would it say? So if chaos can
If
send,
clarity could
if clarity
send
can send
chaos a
chaos in the
postcard
future,
from the future, what would the postcard say?
the postcard say would embrace it, embrace chaos, because chaos will give you, once you have moved through the chaos, you have so much strength and resilience. No matter what comes your way, you know you're going to be okay.
Yes, perfect landing. That was a
Perfect.
perfect landing. Michelle, what a gift you've shared with us today. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart so much for coming on to the MindShift Show, turning mindsets into ICAN.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Pamela. And I'm looking forward to also continuing this conversation. I
Yes,
love what you're doing with the Mind Shift Show. So I
thank
would
you.
love to, you know, speak offline and really get to know you and your community and see how we can collaborate because I really believe that
Absolutely.
as women,
Absolutely.
we need to stand together in the gap together,
Yes.
right? And
Together in
just
the
hold our
gap.
hands,
I
yeah,
love
stand in
that.
the gap together. And
Yes.
I just know that, as you said, especially when we're, maturing in age, we need that support in our lives who kind of get us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. To my listeners and to those of you who are watching on YouTube, I want to thank you for joining me today on the MindShift Show, turning mindsets into ICAN. And listen, if today's episode resonated with you, I invite you to go on to a clarity sprint with me. It's a private 60 to 75-minute session, just you and me, where we identify exactly what's been holding you back, take you from your chaos to clarity, and build your personal 3-step action plan together. You will leave with clarity, with direction, and of course, a concrete next step that you can take immediately, not next year, immediately. So I'll put the link in my show notes. I'll also include Michelle's book, If Your Laundry Could Talk. You would want to check that out. Please come on to this clarity sprint with me. And I always say, if anyone ever asks me what I do, I tell them this. I help professional women over 40 who have everything else figured out except themselves. So they can stop performing success, unbury their purpose, and start living it from the inside out. If that is you, I would love to work with you. Go to https www.calendly.com/coaching your growth. And as I leave you today, I want you to carry this with you. Not ready is the story we tell ourselves
Mm.
to prevent ourselves from beginning. So let's close that book on that chapter. Let's close the book on that story so you can begin today. You're not late. You're not too old. You are right on time for this version of you. I'm Pamela E. Bloomfield, and I'll see you next time.